Well, it certainly has been a while, hasn't it? Have a seat. I have a lot to tell you. Where have I been? I've been right here keeping the fire lit. But now that you're back, I actually have a question for you. How old were you when you were first allowed to be unattended with a computer, internet access or not? Without internet access, computers are just fun tools that let you create things like music, art, and literature. But what's the point of creating if you can't share what you create? I mean, there are plenty of things I've created that will never see daylight, but the internet is for us to share things with one another. News, updates, that cool thing you found. But you need to understand. I'm old. I am older than South Park. I am, for all intents and purposes, a vintage robot. But I was a child once. I used to play things like Myst and cutesy educational games on my parents' shared computer way back in the 90s. Without access to or knowledge of the internet, there really wasn't a lot for me to do other than make drawings in Paint, play those games I mentioned, and fiddle around with the screensaver. Was anyone else obsessed with the screensavers? When I got older and was given my own PC, I loved previewing every single screensaver that was available. Pipes, the maze, but my favorite one was the one where it was like you were driving a vehicle in an empty city. You could even make it rain or snow. You could drive during the day or at night. I thought that was pretty cool. There were also places on the internet that you could download screensavers as well. But I managed to give myself a virus doing that, so... When my grades would drop and I'd lose internet access for a while, I didn't really have much to do but write little fan fictions or screw around with the screensaver to entertain myself. Shake the mouse or hit a key, the desktop pops up, and the show is over for a bit. When screensavers were first created, their purpose was to prevent phosphor burn-in on computer monitors. It also hid what was going on your screen from people passing by. You leave your computer alone for too long, the screensaver pops up and protects your screen while also hiding what was going on your monitor. Now that we've made the switch over to LED screens, the screensaver is no longer necessary. You can still set one up if you really want to. You can even set them up so that you have to type in a password to access your screen again. Maybe you simply value your privacy, or maybe you have something to hide. There's nothing wrong with having secrets. I have plenty. Either way, the screensaver is still an option. But let me pose a new question. What if the screensaver has a secret? I vividly recall getting the shit scared out of me by an aquarium screensaver that I downloaded. Now, why did it scare the shit out of me? Because there was an audio clip of a man with a deep voice asking if I had locked my doors that would go off at random intervals. The computer was in the corner of my bedroom, so I would be falling asleep and suddenly there was a deep, booming voice coming from the corner of my room, asking if I was sure I had locked my doors. But that's what we're going to be looking at today. An itch.io meta-horror game created by someone known as Mr. Yes, also known as the guy behind, what was it called? It was a YouTube series that came out a few years ago. What was it? Oh, right. Petscop. He created Petscop. Tony Domenico is back. That's right. You heard me. This is what we're doing. In fact, we're gonna do this a little differently. Just hold still for a sec. It doesn't hurt me, but for all I know, it's gonna tingle. So just hold still. You get to see what I see. And I see something I really want to show you. Look at it. If you want to go through it on your own without me in your ear the whole time, go for it. I finally figured out how chapters work on YouTube, so you can skip ahead without worrying about missing anything super important. I'll see you on the other side, okay? Unless you want to come with me? I've already gone through all this a couple of times, so you might be going in blind, but I'm not. You can come with me for this 90s throwback of a horror show if you really want to. What I'm getting at is, you're going to hear me unscripted and uncut, and I will not apologize for the multiple line flubs and F-bombs that you are going to encounter. So, you want to come with? Okay. Just stay close. It's dark out there, and I really don't want to lose you. Here we go. Okay, so this reminds me of the first computer I ever played with, which was some sort of 90s thing. Like, Windows 90... It wasn't even Windows 98, it was Windows 94. When my parents upgraded to 98, they gave me, like, the 94 version. But let's actually look at this. 3dwi.scr discovery pages. What is 3dwi.scr? 3D Whisker. Yeah, that's what they call it. 3D Whisker is a freeware screensaver. The full title is 3D Workers Island, but most of us prefer to use its file name instead, pronounced 3D Whisker. Now you know. In 3D Workers Island, 6 characters interact on a tiny island with complex and unpredictable results. Every session tells a different story of the island. It's a cute little island. Nice and non-violent. Many have found it to be compelling on levels both technical and emotional. Now, this is probably obvious, but you can't really click on any of these links. Don't ask how many times I tried to click on a link. The original source of the program is unknown. It was discovered on 3D Screensavers Palace. Remember what I said earlier about there being websites where you could download screensavers? This is what I was talking about. We recommend trying 3D Whisker yourself by downloading it from the download page. No thank you, I'm good. They unfold dynamically and every session is different, which means you are guaranteed to see things that none of us have seen before. If you discover anything interesting or important that has not been recorded here or discussed on the forum, feel free to send us an email, or create a thread on the forum asking about it. But please do not treat this as a place for tall tales. What counts as a tall tale? Check out the overview page. 3D Whisker Discovery Pages was created by me, Pat Lawler or P. Lawler. So this is Pat or P. Lawler talking, okay. And the technical side is largely run by Singer. There's a contact page, and click. Download. We're not going to be downloading because we can't. Only compatible with Windows operating systems, so all the Mac users are missing out, and I don't think Linux existed back then. Did it? I don't know. Run the installer and follow the steps of the installation wizard afterwards if you were running a... Okay, Windows 95 was the one that I played with as a kid. Windows 98 is what my parents upgraded to. Not important to the story we're looking at, but important that I remember what I'm talking about. If you run into any trouble, create a thread on our forum and somebody is sure to help you out. File download. Click OK. You can click anywhere, it'll do it. I'm just being a smartass. 20 minutes and 10 seconds. You gotta remember, the 90s was a different playground. Welcome! Copying. Installation complete. That didn't hurt, did it? If you enjoy 3D Workers Island, please spread the word online. It would be much appreciated. Also consider reading the README text file because it includes a lot of interesting and useful information about the screensaver. Press the Finish button to exit this installation. There you go. Experimental 3D simulation screensaver for PCs with advanced worker simulation. Ancient AI? Possibly. Right-click, Properties, Alternative Steps. There are 2 different ways to start it up. You can even mess with the settings, like any normal screensaver. I gotta remember, some of you don't know what a screensaver is. That's okay, I still love you. Escape to quit. If enabled, only the escape key will quit the program. Detail level of the 3D models. Simulation quality. Get to know the characters. There are 6 characters on the island. Their names are Amber, Holland, Pat, Joe, Grace, and Rebecca. We even get a cute little character sheet. Worker simulation. Workers are an approach to computation. 3D Workers Island takes advantage of resources in the world. Welcome to the world in the computer. This technology, and it just sort of ends there. That's cute, I think. Oh. Kind of reminds me of Microsoft PowerPoint. Did anyone else play with that just to play with the 3D wording and lettering? I can't remember shit right now. Pat. Rebecca, who is looking dead at us, okay. Joe. Amber. Holland. And Grace. The first thing I noticed about the first time I played through this, I was like, oh, something is going on with Grace and Rebecca. Because they were posed differently. Grace is facing away from the camera, and Rebecca is looking dead at us. Everyone else is looking, well, to the left. And then a few plays later, I noticed that Amber was kind of slouched. Maybe she's looking at a bug on the ground. Like an old Looney Tune. Hey, there's Joe! Is that a coffee mug? Oh, it's a watering can. How cute. Gotta water the flowers. Gotta... And there's Amber! Hi, Amber. There goes Joe. What is there to do on the island? Oh, they're having a talk. Ain't that cute? World. Maw Girl says, Hey, I just want to say that this thing is so cool. My eyes are glued to it. I'm mesmerized. I just want to keep it on all day and see what the people are up to. But my brother needs the computer for his work. Frowny face. Do you know how many times I tried to scroll down? Oh, look, an angel number. I'm easily entertained. What do you all think? And what's happening on your island today? Mr. Crook. Yeah, it's a hidden gem on the internet. It kills that Johnny Castaway thing my uncle thinks is so good. This is better, because the people are like real people you're watching, and you never know what's going to happen next. I've seen dancing and squirming, the baffling games they play with objects, the awkward intimacy that looks like hugging sometimes, and other times looks like, pornographic, frankly. Bustard, responding to Mr. Crook, wrote, Agreed. Mulgral wrote, And what's happening on your island today? Bustard said, Holland just put her face inside a tree. Looks like we're having a cookout. Amber and Joe are near the table, and Amber's got a cheeseburger. Holland is over there. They've got a little doll. Rebecca and Pat are talking, and Grace is... How could this happen to me? Grace has had a seat, and looks like Holland is having a great time while Joe's looking at the ocean. Amber's watching Rebecca and Pat, and Holland is throwing their doll in the water. Okay. Amber, did you eat your burger that quickly? I blinked. What happened? Oh, Amber wants to play. Hi, Pat. Holland playing with the doll. Joe has a burger. Rebecca has a burger. Zoom in. Grace is not having a good time. Probably just teenage angst. You know how it gets. Pat is pointing. Holland, it's actually not safe to eat laying on your back, but I'm not going to tell a screensaver what to do. Enjoy that cheeseburger. Is the doll supposed to be a pig or a cat? I don't know, I've been hung up on that. I'm going to stop for a second and just be like, okay, look at that. What the hell is that? I'm not comfy. But in response to Mall Girl, 12 Point said, I think it's great, but it's buggy and just weird. My roommate keeps talking about how he could do it better. I'd like to see him try. He couldn't even program the turret in our tank game last semester. What an idiot. Homer wrote, my ma hates TV, but she tells me to put on the virtual people. I put on 3D Whisker on the projector, and she squints quietly in her recliner for hours. It's peace for me. Somebody check on Grandma. Quick thing I wanted to note, all of this is happening in 1999. It's over 25 years ago. Singer wrote, I like to keep it running in an alcove of my house and check up on it as I'm passing through. It's good for that. It can surprise you sometimes. The other day, I saw Joe take a remote-controlled helicopter out of the house and fly it around. I'd never seen that before. That's a little strange to have a computer set up just to run a screensaver. I mean, it's a cute screensaver, but even when I would sit there and watch screensavers, I'd get bored after 20 minutes. Earl Egger wrote, I keep hearing stories about this thing, but so far it's boring. I don't get it. I want to know what you guys are doing because I'm starting up the program and watching it and nothing is happening. The people are standing around, sitting around, looking around, walking around. They don't have faces, so I don't know what they're feeling or thinking. I don't know. What's going on here, guys? P. Lawler wrote... Hold up. This has to be intentional. If Domenico wanted to have P. Lawler's icon be anything, it could have been anything, but it's intentionally a scene from, well, the scene from the island that we just witnessed. It has to be intentional, but back to the thing. Which characters are you talking about? You know, some people have worked hard enough in their lives and deserve a rest already. Smiley face. No, but seriously, what do you mean? I see plenty of activity on the island. I do feel a twinge of annoyance when I see a character like Amber sitting around. I want to tell her, hey, you're young. Do something. Well, Holland was rolling around in dirt and Grace was staring at the ocean. So, I don't know how Amber is the lazy one. Ned Hucker wrote, actually it does become entertaining over time, you just have to keep watching. I think you'll be surprised by what you see, but you do have to be kinda open to it. You have to be cool. Be cool and things will be shown to you. Personally, I love this screensaver because it's so fucked up. Ned, what did you see? Is that a stand mixer? Why the hell is there a stand? You know what? It's not my problem. It's gonna rust if you leave it out. I don't know what that is. But there's Grace, Joe reading a book, and Pat just being Pat. I think she heard me. Apparently she just wanted to twirl around in the sand for a minute. Nothing wrong with that. Hi, Rebecca. Rebecca says something to Joe, and Pat intercepts. I'm gonna be completely straight with you guys. I tried to close that when I clicked on this for the first time. I never said I was smart. Screen shapes. Can't read the whole thing, but many different kinds of colorful 3D shapes appear one after another, such as cubes, spheres, cylinders, cones, and rings. The shapes rotate and trace paths around the screen. Requires DirectX 5 or greater. 3D Cave 2. This program goes above and beyond its predecessor by Jenna. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a fun thing. It's kind of like the maze game. But what I did want to show you is this. Screen shapes, uploaded in 98, size 0.99 megabytes, downloads 36. 3D Cave 2, uploaded in 99, 11.51 megabytes, downloads 70. 3D Workers Island, an island with people walking around on it. No image available. Uploaded in 97. 4.22 megabytes. 6,219 downloads. What the hell's going on? Oh look, Rebecca is just sitting there watching the water, and Amber, who got called lazy earlier. I hate it when people call children lazy. You ever been a kid? It's hard. Being alive is hard. But anyway, there she goes mowing the lawn. Careful of the flowers, honey. And she's going around the back and... What's back there? Overview. This is the thing Pat made. Pat Lawler. P. Lawler. Yeah. What is this strange screensaver you have stumbled upon? The only way to really understand 3D Whisker is to try it. It works best without words, but I'll give you my best overview. When you start 3D Workers Island, it will display its 6 characters in a helpful character card that gives you a name for each one. Afterwards, you will be placed in front of an island, and you will mostly remain on that island until you decide to stop the program. The characters are powered by a kind of AI technology that the authors refer to as worker simulation. The authors refer to it as worker simulation, but we don't know who made the screensaver. It is clear from simple observation that this text should not be taken lightly. It's a screensaver. How light can you get? But just how advanced this AI is seems to be an ambiguous and controversial question in the community. I hate not being able to click on links, but I understand that would have made this way bigger than it needed to be. It adds to me needing to know more, which is fun until I can't get any more info. It is very much a matter of intuition at this point. At the very least, it is good enough to capture the imaginations of many. Whatever is happening under the hood, it is taxing to any PC. The program seems to be fluid in this way. It will use whatever resources are provided to it, but can make do with just about any system that is capable of displaying the 3D graphics. Impressive or not as technology, you will find that this is a program of broad and infinite possibilities. Since retiring last November, I have been keeping 3D Whisker running on the desk in my study, in my bedroom, my living room, my kitchen, and my basement. all running around the clock as I do my household tasks and live my life. What I see on each of these PCs throughout the day is still continuously fresh and novel to me. It makes my home into a very pleasant little world. You will notice that the island is quiet. 3D Whisker does not play audio, unlike what you may find in the After Dark products and similar entertainment-based programs, but very much in line with the default package of screensavers in the Windows operating system, such as 3D Maze and Mystify Your Mind. The significance of this silence is considerable. It allows the island to disappear. Zip, 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 zip. It has been a while since I have read, so forgive me for fucking up. Despite its heft, it is also light. There is a sense of ghostly transience, that none of it is really happening, and it can all vanish with the flick of a mouse. Amber and Holland. Amber leans in to say something to Holland. Holland gets up and books it. Seriously, look at the gaps between each frame. That little girl is running for the hills, and Amber doesn't even watch her run. Nobody likes a tattletale. Unless it's that one indie game, and even then it's subjective. Frank Arper said, "This is for my son's island project for first grade, which took second place in the contest. I'm proud of him. Okay, I will admit he mostly played Pajama Sam, while Mom and I built the island. But he did the written part of the assignment himself. Anyway, here are the photos." TPO wrote, "That's adorable." Bustard wrote, "Glad your son's school is teaching him about islands." Chris wrote, "Your living room is disgusting." I'm Cool wrote, "Lol." And P. Lawler wrote, "You did a good job on the island. I have some advice. You should not do your son's work for him. Do not let him get used to the idea that you will do his assignments. Take it from a fellow parent." Did that come off as condescending with or without the funny voice I did, or no? There's the smiley face again. Frank Harper replied, "Thanks, appreciated, but they were expecting parents to help with this one. You should see what the other kids brought in. Anyway, he did the written part, as I said." Buddy wrote, "My son doesn't like 3D Workers Island one bit. It scares him and he makes me turn it off." Johnson wrote, "Kids are afraid of everything. My wife and I rented a tape of The Page Master to watch with her niece, and unfortunately we got to the moment where Macaulay Culkin is in the library and gets overtaken and drowned in rivers of paint. And suddenly the tape went nuts and became unreadable. Her niece started screaming. Now she's afraid of getting drowned in paint and turning into a cartoon. I don't blame the people who made that movie for making a terrified Macaulay Culkin character get drowned in paint, but some kids really do think it's possible to get swallowed up into a cartoon prison where they can't escape. And hell, if I believed that, I'd be afraid too." Eggs. Amber. What's that? That's Pat. Why are they talking behind the house? Amber sits down, and it looks like Pat is leaning down to say something to her. Yep. Whatever Amber said to Holland, Amber is getting a scolding for it. Somebody get those eggs. Good kid. Hello, good kid. This happened back in October. In detention, they had me sit in the computer lab where I ostensibly wasn't allowed to play on the computers. Lol, but my computer lab teacher was in their upgrading office, and I showed him 3D Whisker and explained it to him. I swear he was like enchanted by it. He wanted to install it on all the computers, so we installed it on all the computers together while eating donut holes. We had some problems, and I had to call my sweet and angelic mommy to tell her why I was still at school, but we eventually got it working after 7 p.m. We turned off the lights, and it started Ugh. We turned off the lights and started it going on every computer in the room. It was a powerful experience, just all these different things happening on the island all around us. On glowing screens, in the dark and silent computer lab at night. Way better than 3D pipes. Hey, don't diss pipes, I like pipes. It felt like this was the way 3D Whisker was meant to be experienced. I recommend putting this thing on as many screens as you possibly can. Joycey22100 wrote, "What were you in detention for?" Good Kid wrote, "Lol, dress code violations mainly. I also invented a fake skin disease called cutilacune. And I started incorporating it into some of my written assignments in English and history, even when it had nothing to do with anything." Joycey wrote, "Okay, I'll bite. Tell me about cutilacune. I'm glad you asked." Cutilacune, skin disease with 4 stages. Stage 0, redness and sensitivity. Stage 1, skin gaps, holes or gaps of various sizes exposing dermis. Stage 2, skin islands, widespread loss of epidermis, leaving only a number of skin islands of various sizes. Stage 3, recession of the islands, leading to complete loss of epidermis. Early stages can be treated and reversed, but stage 3 is irreversible. Stages 1, 2, and 3 are consistently rated 10 on the 1 to 10 pain scale. Screaming and hair pulling and despair. Whew. Pat and Holland just doing things. Hi, Amber. What was that about Amber being lazy? Dumping stuff into the ocean doesn't look lazy to me. Look at Holland. Holland was left unattended with a rock. Holland seems to lay down a bunch. Didn't someone say earlier that Holland put their face in a tree? Her face? I'm sorry, I can't remember the gender of Holland. But Amber and Pat are just balls. Balls. Red balls. Joycey wrote, "Who's your favorite character?" Weird Tall Guy wrote, "Amber." Cheer wrote, "No question, Amber." Reality Priest wrote, "Amber's the answer," and posted a screenshot of Amber waving. Hi, Amber. Can you tell that I like Amber? Sax Player wrote, "If I had to choose a favorite, tough one." JK, it's Amber. Fuck everyone else. Ned Hucker wrote, "I'm offended that the question is even being posed, but I understand. You don't know any better. You're better off this way." Should I be concerned? Reality Priest wrote, "I know we're not supposed to talk about those topics here, but we can at least be honest when it comes to questions like this. I'm not going to pretend my favorite character is Holland or Grace or somebody else just so things can stay clean on this forum." Can somebody fill me in on the joke here? What's wrong with the other characters? Hi, buddy. P. Lawler wrote, "Amber would be a good choice and may have been mine, but I am sometimes put off by her lazy tendencies." I don't like P. Lawler. Naturally, I would choose Pat, since by coincidence, we share a name, and I believe the 2 children are hers. Another coincidence, as I also have 2 daughters. However, I cannot help but feel attracted to Rebecca, with her eye-catching red hair and shoes. It is a difficult question. And if you missed it, I'm Cool wrote, "Amber, motherfucker." I have to agree with I'm Cool. We're really far away right now. There's Grace, Amber, and Holland. Going over to the edge of the water. Holland is looking around. Did Holland put their doll in the fucking water again? You're gonna lose it if you keep doing that. The ocean is unforgiving. Holland, what the hell? Just booking it back. Money! Or something. Nobody likes a tattletale, Holland. Meanwhile, Amber is shading her eyes and looking for something. Okay.
Oh, here we go.
Computer for the... All that warm up and I still fucked up the first word. Computer Philosophy 1. Windows. There are of windows everywhere we see them, and anyone could be looking in at you. That's a part of what makes them scary, but windows are even scarier when you're the one who looks in them, because of when you never know what you'll see in them. Remember the enthusiasm in a market for window into reality in 1996 as the Nintendo 64 broke, once Lore Project Reality. Of course, the TV screen is really a window into fiction and not reality. The only real window of reality is the one we looked into as a baby and still cannot turn from. What called the common story theme of falling into asphalt imagery, we bring the inside into the outside, and the outside is the place we are stuck looking. This is the only meaning of I'm trapped in the TV. When we find out that reality is the thing we look into. But what does that mean? Where are we? What happens when something bad you find responsible for is there, and you do nothing to stop it because it looks through a window and is not real? I'm trapped in here and I may never return home. What do we mean? I have no fucking idea what you're talking about, buddy. I think you need to lay down for a minute. Two-dimensional. Three-dimensional. Your dimensional. Window. Island! Sorry for shouting. Wow, tell me more about it. So I was with my cousin last week for Thanksgiving, since last year they live 3 hours drive away. It got late and he took me down a dark trail and scared the piss out of me, talking about ghosts and murders. In a quiet moment I thought I might change the subject, so I started talking about 3D Whisker apropos of nothing. Turns out he knew about it, which caught me off guard. It got late and he took me down a dark... I just fucking read that. And he carried on with the exact same tone as when he was talking about torture, killers a moment earlier. God. But now talking about 3D Whisker. As if telling me about a conspiracy or something, he went on about the girl in the pink shirt, and gave me this long list of ominous things to pay attention to in the screensaver. Oh, he's one of those Amber shitheads. Those people basically took down that old Discovery Pages website a couple years ago. Ruined a good thing. Yeah? Anyway, when we got back, we watched 3D Whisker together until 2 a.m. on the slowest, crappiest computer in the world. We watched until suddenly the computer froze completely. But he told me it wasn't really frozen, that actually 3D Whisker does that on purpose in order to hide things that are happening. What? I don't know. He was making things up on the spot. But I think they still meant something to him. Buddy wrote, okay, so... I almost don't want to ask this at all, but ugh. I keep hearing certain implications about this screensaver that I don't want to repeat here, but you probably know what I'm talking about. I think maybe it's supposed to be a joke, but if so, I don't find it funny at all. Can somebody give me some more info about this? And Sax Player wrote, "Turn back now, don't go any further!" Reality Priest posted the image, "Stop." Ned Hucker wrote, "For your own peace of mind, stop this line of inquiry now and do something else. Don't become another one of us freaks." Reality Priest wrote, "Seriously, I wish I could go back to enjoying this screensaver normally. I want to be a normal person again. Please, God, let me forget. What did you see? Ned Hucker wrote, there are links that can be provided if you really want them. I can send them to your email. Just let me know. Chia wrote, I'm no coward. Here's a link. P. Lawler wrote, link removed. Go ahead. Enjoy. And Ned Hucker wrote, yeah, that's not going to last very long. Joe? What are you doing? How deep is the water? Holland? What are you doing? Honey? Put that back. Ugh. Where are you going? Inside 3D Whisker, and the Earl is completely blocked out. The windows of my living room, covering the walls with wide views of my front and backyards, fill the room with light during the day and an air of vulnerability during the night. My brother crashes here. He sleeps on the couch against the back windows. Sometimes we sit together, looking out those windows, and tell stories about the house beyond my backyard. A man lives in that house with his 2 sons. The curtains are closed, and we imagine our own childhood replaying itself behind them. It's just a stupid game, really, making up stories about the neighbor. I think of it as a way to bond over past experiences. Somehow we get emotional about it anyway, but not emotional enough to do anything, because of course it's a stupid game. There's no point in worrying about those children based on feelings and intuition alone. Still, we both find that our dreams become more vivid with time. Lately, we've grown exhausted of that game, but recently I downloaded 3D Workers Island. It plays on a PC in the corner of my living room. You should check out this program. It's a screensaver, which means it only starts when you aren't using your computer. But when it starts, you're on an island. There are people around, but they don't do much. Not when they're outside, anyway. Naturally, you wonder what they might be doing inside the windowless red house in the background. That's when things start to go wrong. When you start wondering that. And now we begin another game. As in life, concern begets more concern. The reality is always worse than you think it is. No matter how much you learn, it's always worse. And the only escape is to stop asking, to stop digging, to stop learning. This is your chance to stop. The preferred resource for all things 3D Workers Island is called 3D Whisker Discovery Pages. Created and maintained by Pat Lawler, it covers everything a reasonable person would want to know. You should browse her website first if you haven't already, because it's quite good. But Pat Lawler doesn't see what we see, or chooses not to. I've created a different kind of resource. Here I take your sightings and I display them for the benefit of others. Together, we play this game the way it's meant to be played. Welcome to my website, Inside 3D Whisker. Beyond here are themes of violent abuse and torture. Continue if you can handle that. The dissonance between that website we just came from and the happy, cheerful island is fucking mood whiplash. What are you looking for, Joe? There's nothing out there. Just checking on the flowers. Amber and Holland haven't moved at all. Wait. Was Joe looking at us? Maybe. Oh, look! P. Lawler caught ya. I removed your link because it breaks the following rule. Rule 5, do not post links to the website. You know the one. It is nothing more than a collection of perverted creative writing prompts. I would not usually be so strict about something like this, but clearly there are too many here who cannot stay reasonable and sane while discussing the content of this particular website. so I must make the hard decision of banning it. You can guess what I think about this topic, but let me try to explain the phenomenon. Occurring here. The fact is, many internet users are children and young adults, and children like to play games. What this means is you will occasionally find yourself unknowingly pulled into the games played by children. On the website, you will primarily find stories told by kids to scare other kids. You will also find so-called analysis of these stories that treats them as true fact, to give them legitimacy. But there is no evidence to be found here. I hope I have cleared things up for you, buddy. I know that's his name, but I don't like P. Lawler. And Cheer wrote, "Shut up, Pat. Anyway, more links. Good info about John Sorroway. Have we seen that name before? And Welcome to My World, Stories of Reality." Singer wrote, "Thank you, P. Lawler. Well said. Those violent stories are cheesy and over the top. Blood and guts. Believe me, I've been watching this program for so long, I would have seen such things by now." Cheer replied with, if the screensaver won't open up to you, maybe you need to look within yourself to find the problem. And Sax Player replied, "You'd love to think it's all bloody screaming children. Long before I began seeing the violent shit, I saw the way Amber was treated by the other islanders. I saw her tiredness. I saw her subtle messages. But you just point at the bleeding children and laugh. All right, then." HTML Maniac wrote, "Why is it always Amber who gets abused and killed in these made-up scenarios? I don't get why this community has an obsession with torturing her specifically. You're all freaks and sociopaths is my best guess." And P. Lawler wrote, "Maybe I should create my own section for dealing with 3D Whisker hoaxes. Snopes, oh my god, what a throwback. Does anybody remember Snopes? I loved that shit. Is it still running? I'll check later. Has a good system for these." Yeah, my pointer is still here. True, false, multiple truth values, undetermined, unclassifiable veracity. I would give every one of these stories the red sphere of falseness. False, false, false. And in reply to HTML Maniac, "Good question. People have a strange amount of concern for Amber. It is a mystery to me," says the person who has made it clear that they think Amber is lazy. 12 point with the creepy avatar again. Jesus fucking Christ, what a website. Ooh. The screenshots and pictures on there are insane. Some of them are obviously straight out of Photoshop. Others, I don't know. They're all low-quality JPEGs for what it's worth. Makes it easy to hide flaws. Holland is... Honey? Honey, turn around. You're running into a wall. Didn't someone say that Holland put their face in a tree earlier? You okay? Inside 3D Whisker. Welcome to Inside 3D Whisker. Here you'll find the content missing from P. Lawler's 3D Whisker Discoveries pages. Again, you can't click on anything. All you can do is watch. Her website should be your source of general information about the screensaver, but come back here when you're done. Pick a category on the left and browse our collection of user-submitted sightings. Download 3D Whisker and let us know what you find by submitting a sighting. Thanks for visiting and telling us your stories. Sorry, I spaced out for a second. Happens when you're a robot, you know? 4/25/99. I'm receiving so many emails about this Sam Ferrero business, though there's not much contention in whether the screenshot of Amber's rare black shirt is real. There's a lot of disagreement about whether the picture on her shirt is really of Sam Ferrero. since it doesn't exactly match any of the known publicly released photos of him. I've expanded the section to include some of your comments. On the subject of photos, I've removed a user-submitted photo from PJR Pin at the request of its original owner. I'm planning on overhauling the category soon. More details to come. A day earlier, added a link to Grace's guilt. Great quote. Lucky for that girl, her story became an urban legend. Most people don't believe it really happened, even if they are fascinated anyway. A perfect disappearing act, the real transforming into fiction. Now she lives her disgraceful retirement in the remote world of a cartoon, but reality will haunt her conscience forever. Added some more user submissions to worker degeneration. April 23rd, 99. Added an avalanche of screenshots to Strange Faces. I can't believe people are walking to the bathroom at night and seeing these things. Making this website has convinced me never to run 3D Whisker after bedtime. Thank you, P. Lawler. No sounds, no faces. Wrong on both accounts. 421. Falling behind on emails. Sorry everybody, but pray for my brother because he's been having a hard time lately. He's in the hospital now. Sometimes you've been broken in ways that don't hit you until decades later. I expect my turn to come soon. When that day comes, my brother will be alive to support me. But for now, let's go. Maybe not in front of the kid? If we had seen instances of two of the characters clipping through one another earlier on, I wouldn't be as weirded out, but maybe I need to get out more, but they're definitely doing something. Why are they doing it in front of Amber? What are y'all doing? Did Rebecca look like she was trying to get away to anyone else? PJR Pin. The PJR Pin is one of 3D Whisker's first popular sightings. The letters PJR stands for Pat, Joe, and Rebecca, 3 characters on the island. When these 3 characters approach Amber in the following formation, facing her, it's called a PJR Pin. Amber is in the center of the formation. The pin isn't complete unless all 3 adults are close enough to prevent Amber from moving, or in other words, pin her in place. This is a very strict and specific requirement that is not met often. Formations in this particular shape are uncommon between any 4 characters. When they do form, they're spontaneous and brief. They'll usually reorganize themselves into more stable circles, or rather diamonds, like this. And then it goes over why the PJR Pin is significant. All 4 characters disappear instantaneously, the world is replaced with darkness. In that darkness appears the photograph of a child in clothes that resemble Amber's pink stripes. She is sometimes injured, sometimes not. An audio clip of a young woman's scream, or multiple screams, play from the speakers. It's usually interpreted as Amber's voice, but sometimes has the voice of an off-camera witness. The world reappears. Pat, Joe, Rebecca, and Amber reappear at the front door of the house one by one. Amber is the last to appear. No evidence of the event remains. More accounts miss the first 3 steps in the sequence. It's only when they hear the screams that they start paying attention to what's happening on the screen. I'm getting flashbacks to that fucking aquarium screensaver that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. 3D Whisker doesn't officially play audio, but many stories report sounds. They usually describe very loud or very quiet sounds, like screams or whispers, with little in between. And they have a page just for whispering, mostly involving Amber pleading for help. Much pride is taken in the skill of recognizing these whispers as quickly as possible, since they often precede other events for which screenshots are desirable. But there's no whispers preceding the PJR pin. Photographs are a common theme in these sightings. 3D Whisker appears to have a heavy preoccupation with a real world, and in particular, with real human bodies, from living and healthy to mangled or emaciated or dead. In this case, even when Amber doesn't display any physical injuries, her transformation into a human body is often interpreted as an act of violence itself. In general, any movement between fiction and reality, in either direction, is treated with an undertone of terror. Descriptions of the photo vary. It may be that people are seeing the same photo and remembering it differently. It's not hard to believe that a disturbing and sudden scream is shocking people into seeing or remembering injuries that aren't there. But it's also possible that 3D Whisker is displaying different photos of the same girl at varying levels of injury, perhaps dependent on the context of the simulation, as Amber's plight has been shown to progress in severity over time. Who is the girl in the picture? Until we have a legitimate screenshot, we have little to go on, and this one has proven challenging to capture. Jake the Mad Cow had quite a fright. He writes, "I'm never running it overnight again. Holy shit, it woke me the fuck up. I've never been so scared in my entire life. I was asleep and then an ear-splitting scream. What the fuck? P. Lawler lied to me. Her website says that there's no sound in the screensaver. Well, guess what? There's sound, motherfucker." I don't know why I made him Southern. Ashley B. heard it too, and caught a look at something interesting. Ashley writes, "Because it was the last thing I ever expected to happen in 3D Whisker, I have to admit I was jolted and shaking for a good hour afterwards. I knew the discovery pages were wrong about other things, but somehow this one thing I trusted, and, well, my volume was turned up quite high, so it was really something else. I only got the shortest glimpse at the screen before it reverted back to the status quo. It was dark, but I saw the dim shape of a human, realistically proportioned, dressed in a pink and white, like Amber. A photograph, I think. It wasn't moving." Harold has an uglier description. It was bad. Oh my god, lol. I can only laugh now, but I'm done with this screensaver for now. For real this time. I think one scream repeated 3 or 4 times, or maybe it was more than one scream. And the image was a tasteless display of... And that's all we get for that. That's a laptop. That's a lawnmower. That's a tree, that's a tree, that's a flower, that's a house. These are people. We've never actually seen Grace facing forward. Holland, what are you doing? I think Joe and Rebecca are asking the same thing. Holland is he breakdancing? Nope, that's a seizure. I shouldn't joke about that. Wonder what they're talking about. The talk of the PJR pin was talking about it like it has to be Joe, Rebecca, and Pat involved, but this is a diamond shape. I don't know where I was going with that, but we went there anyway. Reality Priest wrote, "It's getting worse and worse. The more I watch, the more I notice, the more I understand, the more bold it becomes with the things it shows me. Every time I come to some new revelation, the screensaver shows me more. But most other people don't see these things, and if I have someone in the room with me, they don't happen." Oh, God. That was a throwback to some shit. HTML Maniac wrote, "Are you telling me P. Lawler, with the 10 billion hours she's been watching 3D Whisker, hasn't seen any of these things?" Chris wrote, "Getting dangerous in here, lol." Good Kid wrote, in reply to HTML Maniac, Pat Lawler is a criminal. I have family who used to live down the street from her. Nobody in their right mind would trust Pat Lawler. Pat Lawler shouldn't be allowed to run a 3D Workers Island fan website. She should be in prison. Anyone who wants details is free to message me. I'm GoodKid85 on AIM. Okay, I know most of you know better by now, but never fucking give out your info online. Never give that shit out. This is back in 99. I'm telling you this now in 2024. Don't your Discord don't share your Discord, don't share your email. Just don't put that shit on a forum where anyone can get it, okay? I know that's obvious, but it feels like something I need to tell you, because God knows what your parents are telling you out there. You don't want to know what my parents told me. Back to the thing, Dante, come on. Chris wrote, damn it, good kid. Sax Player wrote, and he's banned. That was fast. Weird Tall Guy wrote, P. Lawler is always online. She reads every post the second you submit it. You cannot evade her. Jesus. If we go back and look at Good Kid's signature, forgive me, I don't know anything. I'm just a 14-year-old teenaged kid with a little smiley face. Who do we know that likes to end certain things with a smiley face? There's Pat on the internet, looking around, just doing stuff. Going back inside. No, going around back. What is back there? I'm gonna be straight with you again. The first time this happened, I flinched. I, honest to God, flinched. The world. The house. The world. The world inside the computer. Worker degeneration. Update 42499. I've decided to stop posting new submissions to this page. This is one of the most well-documented sightings, and at this point I'm receiving mostly redundant info. Thanks for everything you've sent in. Workers' degeneration is something akin to injury or damage. This damage is associated with an active entity, which 3D Whisker calls a worker, hence the name of this page. It's not clear to me how this term came about. It wasn't invented by 3D Whisker's authors, yet it implies a bit of knowledge about the Screensaver's internals. That the injury is associated in some fundamental way with the underlying worker concept. This is especially strange since the only documented case of worker degeneration are tied to one character, that being Amber. Amber again! Jeez! Therefore it seems premature to generalize this term to such an extent. But I'll use the established name. If you've ever seen a red amber, you've seen worker degeneration. This is an early stage. After this comes compression, and the result looks like this. This red ball is seemingly inert. It doesn't move or interact with anything, but yes, the red ball is amber. You know that cold sinking feeling you get when you just read something messed up, but you can't identify exactly what it is about it that's making you feel uncomfortable? This was that moment for me. I was already unsettled earlier, but this was the moment my brain went, oh, here we go. This state has been interpreted as representing dehydration, malnutrition, and or mutilation, and the many photographic sightings seem to confirm all of these interpretations equally. But most of all, it's become associated with small, muffled screaming and therefore with pain. It doesn't take long for this red ball to start shrinking and quieting down until sooner or later it can't be seen or heard anymore. Amber will usually respawn from the house at some time after compression, even while the red ball is still visible. The program will eventually continue as usual. Written by G. Kelly. Falling into asphalt. Asphalt was mentioned on that really random seeming screen about... It was talking about windows seeing in and seeing out and how we never look away. But Falling into Asphalt wrote, letting the screensaver go on longer periods has unlocked something, and now I'm seeing all sorts of funny shit like Red Amber. She goes in the house, comes out redder, goes behind the house, comes back redder, comes back redder again, comes back weird and slow, crawls around until she's just a ball on the ground that everyone ignores, and that's it. Nathan Manfield kept the screensaver running all day and writes, I went away for 8 hours, and when I got back, there's a bunch of red spheres scattered around and making noise. Altogether, it sounded like a chorus of dissonant humming. Now I'm wondering just how long my dog had to listen to that shit. Poor dog. This one is from Thomas. How many of them are sitting at the bottom of the ocean? I just can't help but feel hopeless about everything. Nobody will ever help me, and I'll never help myself. I'm too afraid even to reach out. I'm not even writing this right now. This message exists only in my head. This whole website exists only in my head. 3D Workers Island? What is that? Would I really put this online? Would I really give anyone the slightest glimpse into my world? This is fake. This is all fake, and nobody will ever see it. And the website owner writes back to Thomas, I hear you. I understand. Suffering in silence is such hard work. Grace, what are you looking for? How many balls are at the bottom of the ocean? Again, when this happened, I jumped. How many balls? How many colors? Again, that sinking feeling when you're not sure what's happening but you feel uncomfortable kicks in. I've played this a few times and my brain is still going, I'm not comfortable with what's happening. Recession of the Islands. 6 red balls. Shrinking away to nothing. A little red house on a little green island, in the middle of the sea. There is only ocean. There is nothing else. This is all there is. This is all there can be. And it's happening across thousands of screens. "3D Workers Island, a Thing" by Tony Domenico. That was more than just a thing, Tony. Oh, boy. That was nostalgic. Unsettling? I mean, it was for me at least. How are you feeling after sitting through that with me? Actually, you know what? Hang on. Don't move. I'm getting a cramp. Hang on. Oh, there we go. Back to the fire, back to the woods. Let me throw a log on. I gotta keep it lit. I don't like being away from it for too long. There you go. That's much better. Nice and toasty, right? That was a hell of a jaunt. Nice and quick with lots to pick apart. I love that. A nice, nostalgic format and not a jump scare in sight. There were a couple heavy jabs at the creepypasta cliches that plague so many older stories like lost episodes and bootlegs and hacked gaming, you know. If you were there for it, you know what I'm talking about, and if you've got no idea what I'm talking about, you're better off not knowing. Ugh. Who knew you could have so much fun with a screwed up little screensaver? I'm impressed. It's 300 click-through images, tons of things to latch onto and talk about. It is such a simple premise, but it was done so wonderfully. It's all there in one sitting. There's even a version you can click on so you don't lose your place. It's, also how I knew how many images there were. It takes 30 to 45 minutes to get through, depending on your reading speed. The whole thing can be done on your own without me yapping in your ear, which I'm sure some of you would like to do. The simplistic artwork and the 90s aesthetic give it such a fun twist. Nostalgia is such a big factor in some of the best horror there is. Everything we're seeing happened over 20 years ago. I mean, think about it. Is the screensaver still running somewhere? Are people still downloading it? There's just so many questions and so many what-ifs, but it's still such a small project. It's bite-sized. But it really goes to show how something simple and quick can still make you sit back and think, right? What was that? What do I think? I think this is going to take a bit. How about you get up, have a stretch, and go get a drink? I'll be right here. So don't worry about finding me again. Just, I do want to talk about it, but once I get going, it's kind of hard to stop. Go on. I'll wait. There you are. So, are you ready? Okay. Here we go. We're going to have to back up and take a look at this from a wider angle before we focus on what we've been given. I'm asking you to bear with me. It's about to get heavy in here. For 3D Whisker and for Petscop, child abuse is a prevalent theme in both. Is it going to be a prevalent theme in everything that Tony Domenico makes? We'll have to wait and see, but either way. I put a disclaimer up at the beginning of the video for a reason. I don't make money off of this. I do this because I want to do this. Because I have something to say. I'm not going to censor myself. I didn't do it back in the day, and I'm not going to do it now. If the censorship gods smite me, then so be it. Without getting into the heavy details of who I had been before my current robotic iteration, I was a human child. And unfortunately, I dealt with different forms of child abuse. Some of the things I am going to talk about are not easy, but we need to talk about them to better understand my perceptions of 3D Whisker. But, are you familiar with 8 Passengers? How about Daddy-O-5? Why am I bringing them up? Ruby Frank is a woman who lived in Utah and is currently incarcerated after endangering the lives of her 6 children. Her YouTube channel name came from the fact that it was herself, her husband, and their 6 kids, 8 passengers. What started as a family vlog that uploaded a couple of times a week quickly became scrutinized after one of the older children of the Frank household talked about being forced to sleep on a beanbag for months as punishment. As more disturbing patterns came up from the other children, Ruby and her husband defended their choice of punishment. The YouTube channel got deleted, but people in the neighborhood where the family lived noted that the children were often left alone. I'm not going to go over the entire thing, 'cause, Jesus. There are video essays that'll tell you what happened in great detail. I'll even link one for you down below. As for Daddy05, well, with Ruby Frank, she didn't want to agree what she was doing was cruelty repackaged as discipline, but for Daddy05, the cruelty was the point. Daddy05 was a YouTube channel run by Mike Martin, and was primarily about posting prank videos, and these pranks were usually aimed at his children. Cody, one of his children, was the most popular target. 2 well-known instances of these quote-unquote pranks had Cody screamed at after being blamed for spilling ink on the carpet. It turned out the ink spilled was invisible ink. And Cody definitely didn't spill it. Another one had Cody being punished by not being taken to Disney along with his siblings. There were also multiple instances of Mike coaching his other children to hurt one another. Like I said, the cruelty was the point. But the cruelty was framed as just a joke. The initial channel was terminated, but a new one opened up. Things got ugly and charges were filed, plea deals were struck. Martin lost custody of Cody and another child, but kept custody of the other 3. There's another video down there for you. But what does that have to do with a creepy screensaver? Enough. Frank and Martin are not the only people who have put their families' lives on the internet for all to see and had it come crashing down when it was revealed that they were not as wholesome or joking as portrayed. How many family vlogs are out there, do you think? How many of them are posting what they want you to see and not everything that's happening? If people don't want to see the ugly side of raising multiple children, they only want the fun parts. So that's all you'll get at first. All the sugar and spice and fun and joy, and the occasional struggle just to bring everything you're seeing down to earth. Just to draw in the masses that wonder how this stranger on a screen can do it when the viewers feel that they fall short doing the same thing. A lot of the time, the people posting this kind of thing only want to be praised for being good parents. Praise for giving their child a good sense of humor, or for raising their kids to be tough and resilient and self-reliant. They don't want criticism. But eventually, the mask slips a little bit. People on the internet like what they're seeing, so let's show them a little more. Obviously, if they like everything that came before, they're going to like this, and, What do you mean it's abuse? It's not abuse, it's discipline. It's not abuse, it's a joke. You don't have any right to tell me how to raise my kids. Do you know how hard it is to take care of this many children? It's not all sunshine and rainbows. Toughen up. But when all you show people is sunshine and rainbows, the audience is going to flinch when the lightning strikes. This also brings me to mention Big Brother, in the sense of the reality TV show. Not 1984. It was a program where a number of guests were packed into a house and recorded for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 100 cameras, 100 microphones, no peace from the ever-watchful eyes of the viewer or the producer. It's one thing if you're only doing that for a short time, but what if you had to do it all the time? What if you were strewn about thousands of computer screens? Some of them on for hours at a time, just to observe your world and everything you do in it. That sounds horrifying. Unless you crave attention, if you need that external validation, if you need people to tell you what a good person you are, what a good parent you are, if you need people to see you, to feel like you exist, and then you add in that you are in control of what people actually see, that sounds like a perfect scenario for a narcissist. Ruby Frank presented a perfect Mormon life with her wonderful husband and 6 children, and when people didn't buy the narrative that what she was doing was discipline and not abuse, things escalated to the point that she deleted her channel. Daddy-O5 was the other side of the coin. The things he was doing to his kids were framed as pranks. He wanted the behaviors that he was presenting and encouraging in these children to be normalized. He's just a fun-loving dad having a great time with his kids. He's not hurting them. Both of these cases wanted praise and attention for what they were doing. Frank was more careful about hiding the extent of what was going on, but Martin framed it as nothing but harmless fun when it clearly wasn't. I'm not here to diagnose anybody, but I want to bring up something that's going to matter later when we actually get back to the screensaver. A narcissist is defined as someone who shows extreme love and admiration for themselves. Narcissistic personality disorder is a mental health condition where the person who has the condition has an elevated vision of self-importance and specialness, a noted lack of empathy, and a deep-seated need to be praised and admired by those around them. People who have narcissistic personality disorder, even as a robot, I still have a fucking lisp. I'm just going to shorten it to NPD for my sake. But people with NPD are not inherently bad or cruel. Labeling everyone with NPD as evil is just as dangerous as when we did it to people who have schizophrenia or people who have DID. NPD is a disorder. While we don't know the exact causes, mental health professionals agree that it's likely a combination of environmental elements, genetic elements, and copying what they see their parents do. These people are sick, not evil. That being said, any person of any race, gender, orientation, mental health status, or social status can be the perpetrator of or victim of abuse. Narcissistic abuse is impacted by the fact that the abuser has NPD or heavy narcissistic traits. Abuse in and of itself is about control. With NPD, it's as much about control as it is attention. The usual pattern of abuse can begin at any point, and it kind of goes like this. Tension, things start to build up. Incident, the abuser lashes out. Reconciliation, mend what can be mended. The cool down, the honeymoon period. Things go quiet for now, until the tension builds up again. Those 4 things can repeat over and over, often happening quicker and quicker between each phase. But when I said abuse, did you immediately think of somebody hitting someone else? It's okay if you did. Abuse isn't just getting hit. I know you know this. Sexual abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, verbal abuse, child neglect, child endangerment, child abandonment. There's a lot. With narcissistic abuse, the pattern looks a little different. Defining event. A blow up on the narcissist's part because it's too quiet in here. Regain control by blaming the person that got blown up on. Peace and quiet, honeymoon phase again. Everything's okay now. The person who got blown up on has taken responsibility for causing the blow up in the first place. Tension starts building. It's too quiet in here. The narcissist needs to change that. But that's not the only cycle associated with narcissistic abuse. This is how it is from the narc's perspective. Supposedly. The victim is idealized, perfect in every way. Oh, wonderful. They say and do all the right things. They stroke the ego as perfectly as one would stroke a sleeping cat. But then, the victim becomes devalued because suddenly they're not perfect anymore. It could be the tiniest little thing that sets off the devaluing stage. Maybe you cooked dinner wrong. It really can be something that small. But those two portions repeat over and over, switching back and forth, but the victim is always left feeling confused and just struggling to keep hold of that relationship. Because love does things to you, and it can make you blind to what's really happening. Finally, the discard stage. The narc is done with you. You're boring. You're not fun. You don't give them endorphins. You don't give them serotonin. You don't give them enough. Get out. Narcissism can present itself in two common types. There are other subsets, but we're just going to focus on the main two. Vulnerable, which is more of an introverted version of narcissism, where most of the narcissistic traits remain inside. They seek to be reassured in what they think of themselves and the world around them. They typically have low self-esteem, and it presents as self-deprecation. Not everyone who is self-deprecating is a narcissist, but a lot of vulnerable narcissists are self-deprecating. Then we've got the other end. Grandiose! It's the loud, extroverted cousin to vulnerable. They are loud, and they are proud, and they want everyone to know how wonderful they are. They are in your face with it. Look how bright I shine. Look how wonderful I am. You agree, right? You don't just have to agree. You have to boost them up, prop them up, and remind them of how great they are. If you want to stay on their good side. But whichever version of narcissist you've got on your hands, a narcissist can rarely work on their own. In fact, they can't. They on their own are not enough for themselves. This is why enablers exist. The enabler's entire purpose is to build up and defend things that the narc does. They will frame everything that the narc does as being done with good intentions, or that they are hurt and they need to be given some grace, or that the victim is the problem, not the narc themselves. So we have the narcissist and we have the enabler. But that's not all. There are many pieces to the puzzle that is the world of the narc. New question. Have you ever heard of a scapegoat? Golden child? Lost child? The scapegoat is the target for all of the anger, disappointment, and negative projections of the narc. The scapegoat is the whipping boy. The scapegoat is the punching bag. The golden child gets the opposite treatment and has all of the good things the narc sees in themselves placed onto this child. Its projection, its vicariousness. The golden child gets whatever they want. The narc gets to live life through them. And that life will be perfect because their golden child is perfect. The lost child gets nothing. They just exist. They tend to self-isolate because they have been ignored for so long that they don't bother reaching out. They're just there, like a decorative lamp. They're just there, staying out of the way. Stuffing children into little boxes that have distinct roles early on in life is going to backfire when those children outgrow the box and realize that something is wrong. There is a distinct group of people out there who were horrible parents to their children. And when those children have grown up, those controlling, abusive, horrible parents get cut off. And they can't stand it. When I say generation loss, I'm not talking about the horror series with Ranboo. The concept of generation loss from a technological aspect is something that I'm sure you've heard of if you've done anything with a computer in the last, decade. See, when you compress a file, be it a piece of music or footage or a picture, in order to make it smaller, parts of it get lost. It sounds stupid when I say it like that, but that's basically what happens. There's two types of compression we're going to talk about today. Lossless and lossy. With lossless compression, you barely lose anything from the original. The file is a little smaller, but it also maintains ability. Something's been lost, but not a lot changes. Not enough that you would really notice anyway. But with lossy compression, you get a smaller file size. You also suffer from something called quality degradation. What you had is not what it had been. You lose data when you compress. Where does that data go? It's gone. Do you know what happens to a lossy compressed file that gets compressed over and over, copied over and over? You know what you're left with when that happens? Well, how much data can you afford to lose? Will you even be able to recognize what's left over? The data that you lose when you compress a lossy file is lost permanently. It's not coming back. It's gone. With that, and everything else I have said in mind, are you picking up what I'm putting down? The island is observed through thousands upon thousands of computer screens, much like how family vloggers are perceived. The viewer is shown a certain amount, and that's about it. Right? We're supposed to only see the good parts, the fun parts, the silly parts. But when you have so many eyes on you, and even have a dedicated forum to talk about the funny things you saw these little characters do, someone's going to notice something eventually, if something happens at all. P. Lawler and Pat, they're the same person. This should not be seen as a stretch by any means, and I'm not talking about Pat being an author avatar of P. Lawler. Pat is P. Lawler. P. Lawler is Pat. Mother of 2 children, Pat is her favorite, but Rebecca is attractive, not a positive peep about Amber. The people making up those dark and ugly stories about this harmless little screensaver are just children. Children believe anything you tell them. Children should be seen and not heard. I hope that clears things up for you, buddy. That may be the user's name, but the condescension is clear as day. And it seems like everyone on the forum who has been there long enough understands it's not smart to cross P. Lawler. It's her world and we're just living in it. A particular 14-year-old with an interesting made-up skin condition certainly learned the hard way. Pat seemed fine with them being there and even spreading the screensaver around until they badmouthed Pat. Click. Ban. Pat created and transferred over to the screensaver, and she took people with her. Not a bunch of people, just enough to keep her ecosystem of self-importance thriving. What better way to control the narrative even further than by creating a forum for that narrative? The only thing a narcissist loves as much as attention is control. Pat is controlling the island and the forum. She is trying to be Big Brother. This cute little island, just these fun little characters just doing random silly things, like mowing the lawn or watering flowers or having a cookout and playing with dolls and staring into the ocean. We never actually see anybody get hit. Even if Holland put her face in a tree, that doesn't really count as getting hit. That counts as Holland being, well, Holland. We did see that rather disturbing scene with Pat and Rebecca, but I'll get to that a little further in. I don't see how a child mowing a lawn is abusive, 'cause it's not. But taking them out back where nobody can see what's going on could have some connotations. We do see Pat scolding Amber around the side of the house, just looming over her. Imagine the stuff we haven't seen, or the stuff we can't see. Hell, while we're at it, people on the Inside webpage were talking about Amber having tried to reach out for help, or sending messages the only way she could without being able to talk, and, without having a face. What exactly did she do to get the viewer's attention? Why can't she do it more often? You don't have to touch a child to abuse them. Verbal abuse can be just as damaging, if not more damaging, than physical. That old adage about sticks and stones is bullshit. Sticks and stones can break your bones, but I definitely remember the things screamed at me more than the times I got hit. Amber is even slightly slouched in her introductory image. And when she's cornered by Pat, she almost immediately folds and takes whatever Pat is dishing out. She doesn't even try to follow Holland after saying something to her that made her bolt back to the house. Amber has given up fighting back. She didn't even flinch when Pat and Rebecca did that. She didn't look over or look away. How many times has she seen something like this? Is she just desensitized to everything? Or is she punished even further if she shows any kind of reaction to anything that goes on? Is she completely numb to it? Is having to be nearby when something like this happens a form of punishment? If you were thinking, oh God, who would do that to their kid as a punishment? You don't have to touch a child to hurt them. But considering the implications of Rebecca and Pat clipping through each other, especially since it looked like Rebecca was trying to get away, and Amber was staring off into the ocean, probably trying to dissociate to not witness what was happening, it's not impossible. Child sexual abuse, or CSA, depending on where you are and who you're talking to, takes many forms. Just like physical abuse can be punching, kicking, or using a tool like a belt or a paddle, or a stick, sexual abuse takes different forms too. Intentional disrobing, age-inappropriate questions, showing the child's pornography, or performing sexual acts in front of a child. All forms of CSA, all without actually physically touching the child. You don't have to touch a child to hurt them. But why is Amber being punished? Because Pat is not the favorite. Remember when I mentioned earlier 2 prominent types of narcissism? Vulnerable and grandiose. Pat definitely strikes me as the grandiose type. At least somewhat. Her wording is condescending. She uses emoticons in a rather passive-aggressive manner. At least from my perspective. She knows what she's talking about when it comes to the island. She knows it better than anyone. With how many hours she logs just looking at the damn thing, of course she knows better than you. But she knows better than you because she's on the island. Besides, what can you do with the dark things you've seen? You can't even talk about it on the forum dedicated to the thing. We are only seeing a fraction of what is going on the island. It doesn't matter what screen you're looking at. You're still not getting the full thing. Most of the time, it looks like a cute little screensaver, and then we get scenes like Pat and Rebecca clipping through each other, or screen captures of Amber turning red. Lots and lots of stories, and the mention of crappy JPEGs. JPEGs are a lossy format, by the way. I know that in some cases of abuse that have been posted on the internet, there are people out there who are able to identify the location where something is happening, just by seeing something in the background or recognizing a location or doing some absolutely batshit insane level of doxing. You gotta be careful what you put out there. There's literally a movie called Don't Fuck with Cats, all about tracking down an animal abuser with the power of the internet. Anyone with the right know-how and enough time, whatever their intentions, can and will find you. But what if you have nothing to go on? It's a screensaver. Who do you report a screensaver to? In a similar vein, how many suspicious apps are in the Google Play Store? Anybody remember Talking Angela? I do. It was all anyone could talk about for a solid month. But I wonder how many other tiny, lesser-known copycat apps are out there. And even if you do find something suspicious or just plain weird, are you really going to report it? It's just an app. It's just a screensaver. Sometimes people in real life see something but don't report it to CPS because, well, it can't be that bad. I mean, they saw something that looked kind of scary, but it was probably just a one-time thing. Or maybe the parent was just having a bad day. Everybody has bad days. Having a bad day doesn't constitute calling CPS on somebody. You're probably just overreacting. There's nothing to see. Everything's probably fine. Just a one-off incident. It's not a big deal. How many family vlogs are out there? How many exist and only have a few thousand views across all the videos combined? There are videos on YouTube that were posted decades ago and only have 20 views. I'm willing to bet something serious happened, at least in one of them. But if only one person saw, and they didn't say anything and nobody else seems to care, who knows what people are going to get away with when the only people paying close enough attention to see something get ignored when they sound the alarm. The people who love to watch this screensaver are plentiful. There's thousands of downloads from one webpage alone. And that's only on one website. We have no idea how many computers have the screensaver on them. How many people downloaded the screensaver and then sent the download file to somebody else? Good Kid mentioned uploading the screensaver to the dozen or so computers in their school's computer lab. Just to round everything up to give a nice, even, probable number about how many times the screensaver has been downloaded, let's just bump it up to 10,000. I know that sounds high, but remember, we're only seeing the numbers from one website. We don't know where else the screensaver has been, or where else it'll go. Out of that 10,000, how many do you think saw something messed up? Apparently enough for there to be a separate dedicated website, but not enough for anything to actually happen with the screensaver. We don't even know where it came from. How can you do anything about a messed up screensaver anyway? It's just out there, and even if the web page where you can download it from were taken down, who's to say a new download link won't pop up somewhere else? Just like in real life, if you report one incident, what's to say the next time it happens the abuser won't be more careful with what they do to the victim? What if it's already happened and you missed it because you weren't watching? You have to sleep sometime. You have to blink. You have to eat food and go to the bathroom. You cannot be watching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Even knowing that, people can't look away. Just like plenty of people couldn't look away from what was happening with Daddy-O 5 or 8 passengers. For all the people saying that what they were doing was wrong, there were plenty who thought it was fine or just didn't care and wanted content. The point of a screensaver is to save your screen. But people are transfixed on watching these digital people go about their digital lives on this digital island. And if you watch anything long enough, you're bound to see something that makes you go, what the hell was that? This could easily be explained away as the screensaver getting glitchy because it ran for too long. Some screensavers, especially back in the 90s, had a timeout setting. It would run for an hour and then the computer would go into sleep mode. At least, that's how I set up my first computer back in the day. So maybe all that messed up stuff people are seeing is just a glitch. Or all those stories really are just made up by bored children. It was even stated on the forum that a lot of those scary images from the Inside website looked fake. In the case of the screensaver, P. Lawler runs the forum. If she doesn't want something to be seen, it won't be seen. And if it is seen, the person who posted it won't be there for long. Click, ban, complete with a smiley face at the end of their clearly edited signature. Pat seems to have everything under control, just how a narc likes it. The island is a tiny speck of control for Pat. Pat had mentioned that she had retired about the same time that 3D Whisker started gaining some real traction. No one knows who created the screensaver or where it came from. But if Pat really did have complete control, why are things going so wrong? Why are people pointing out all these messed up actions? How are these upstarts pointing out the bad shit and getting through her forum to do it? This island may be fun to look at, but it's not a paradise for anyone. Not even the person who created it. We are seeing the world Pat has created in more ways than one. We are watching it fall apart. At least we're seeing the start of the falling apart. We have arrived before the fallout. Whether the fallout ever comes, we're not meant to see that part. Pat wants to be in complete control, but she's not. It's impossible for one person to control everything in their life. It doesn't matter if you built it from scratch or not. Something is bound to go wrong eventually. If she were in complete control, there would be no reason for Amber to be rolled up into a little ball and thrown away. If Pat were in complete control of the island, then people wouldn't see these strange and dark things that are happening. If she were in complete control, there wouldn't be a need for a website dedicated to the weird shit that people are seeing happen on this little screensaver. Pat cannot stop people from talking about what they see outside of her forum. It's not contained to a place that she can control. We saw a conversation on AIM, of all things. What a throwback. But it's loud and clear. She can't control the narrative completely. And if you even so much as try to jostle what control she does have, welcome to the red. Red. A color often associated with passion and intensity, but also with aggression and hunger. It is as much associated with power and luck and love as it is entwined with warning and threat and rage. The red house that no one can see inside of or behind. Rebecca's red hair and shoes as if she is capped head to toe in the color of punishment. Like a little vestibule from crown to heel, the rest of her outfit is white for purity, or a pure idea, a pure vision, an idea, an idolized person, perfection, The idea of Rebecca, but not who she really is. Then we look back to Amber, in her light pink and white shirt, with her brown hair not quite red. Some would call it auburn. I call it a reminder that Amber is the favorite target of Pat's wrath. Pink and white, youth and innocence, a perfect target for a monster who never really grew empathy. Young and lazy, does nothing. You're young, go do something, Amber. Who also mows the lawn and dumps the wheelbarrow into the ocean and is almost always seen hanging out with Holland. But Amber can never do anything right. That's the narrative Pat has built for herself and maintains on her little island. It doesn't matter that so many dark and twisted, gory stories are focused on Amber. It doesn't even matter if they're true or not. All these possibly fictional tales about Amber, all the blood and gore and darkness and torment, it's still attention given to her, and not to Pat. Even in a world of her own creation, Pat is not the center of people's attention, and I bet that just chaps her pixelated ass. If Amber does something wrong, she is pinned and becomes red. Do the other adults have a choice when Amber is designated to be pinned? Or do they have to comply to keep Pat from doing something similar to them? Enablers that I mentioned earlier, well, they enable to protect themselves and others. When they can't protect others, then they protect themselves. But either way, Amber is red. Amber is gone. Remade after being discarded. Degraded. Devalued. But instead of being cut away completely, she has been rewritten to behave the way Pat wants. A copy, with some careful editing, is still a copy. Let's see how long it sticks this time. How long will the cycle continue? How many times is Pat going to let Amber get away with something she deems wrong before we end up with another ball at the bottom of the ocean? Red. The color of the house without windows. Red for Rebecca's hair and shoes. Red for the balls dropped into the ocean. Red like the false ball on that Snopes key for how true something is. Red for that little patch of flowers that grows right next to the house where we saw Pat scolding Amber. Red for the color of a banned user whose icon is flooded with bright red and whose signature looks awfully familiar to the way Pat writes a smiley face after a sentence. Red for the end screen to let us know it's over. There's nothing else for you to see. You, the viewer, are banned from seeing anything else. You are being punished by being cut off. You have seen too much. You are red. Just like Amber at the bottom of the ocean. Red is the color of punishment. But it doesn't stop there. Those few slides where we saw different balls in many colors, there's definitely more than 6 colors there. Were other people on the island before people found it and downloaded the little screensaver? Was the number of people parsed down from the original number to what we now have because this is the max amount of people that Pat could properly control? Is that what Amber was looking for when she and Holland were by the shore? We were zoomed out, but we could see what she was doing. Maybe something she said made Holland run away to the house? Even Holland, the golden child, isn't immune to things going awry. There's no way that Holland hasn't been remade at least once. Maybe it only took a few tries to get Holland right. Seems to be younger than Amber. It might just be me being confused about the doll that they carry around. But they are clumsier than Amber, too. What if Holland was remade to be forever a clumsy little child? Mommy's perfect little girl. Mommy's second set of eyes and ears. Mommy's perfect little tattletale. But even so, Holland doesn't have a face at one point. A symptom of being a golden child to a narcissist who is trying to project a perfect childhood onto said child? Maybe. Or it could be a symptom of being rewritten. Maybe the more that you are rewritten, the more copies of you are made, the more is wrong with you next time. Maybe your body starts to glitch out if it's been too long since your last remake. Copy. Compression. Data loss? How many balls are at the bottom of the ocean? How many people have been sentenced to life forever as a ball rolling around at the bottom of a digital sea? Can they even scream? Can they even move? Or are they forever at mercy to the whims of the ocean? An ocean that has no ending and maybe not even a bottom. Are they still sinking? How quickly did Pat get rid of them when there was nothing left to be copied over into a new version? How many times has Amber alone been remade? How many remakes are left before she's unsalvageable? How many times has she been punished because she didn't do what Pat wanted? Amber knows about the balls. She's even dumped them into the water, old versions of herself. Does she remember who she was last time? How many of her are down there? Does she know? Did she lose count? I didn't forget about Joe. Joe could be a lot of things. He could be Rebecca's actual spouse, the father of Grace. I didn't forget about her either. He seems content with being outdoors and taking care of the flowers, but he also seems fine sitting in a chair in the ocean, waiting for Holland to bring over a lamp. Back to Rebecca, who Pat described as attractive. Seems to be a fixation for Pat within the screensaver itself. Rebecca seemed okay with cooking on the grill and even passed food to Holland. But when she tried to talk to Joe, Pat cut her off. She doesn't need to talk to Joe that badly. After all, Pat is right there. My first couple run-throughs of the project, I initially believed that Rebecca was the one behind the inside page, but I scrapped that pretty quick. We know that there's a laptop on the island, but an entire web page? No way. The inside web page, well, Rebecca is unlikely. But I do think that it's more likely that she would contribute than be the one behind it. Running an entire web page that size is a lot of work. I mean, just look at Pat and her forum. Even she needed help with that. We don't know how much power Pat truly has, but we do know that she had help from somebody named Singer. Singer is absolutely capable of creating the Inside Whisker website, but why the hell would Singer do that? The short answer is Singer wouldn't. G-Key, however. G-Key. G-K. Good kid. Huh. Anyone can lie about anything on the internet. In the 90s, good luck fact-checking. Whether Good Kid actually knew how messy things were getting for the screensaver when they started the Inside web page, or if it just started as a joke to tell scary stories, and then they actually saw things that they cannot forget, it's not certain. It is possible that they either knew Pat when they were growing up, or it's possible that they worked with Pat before her retirement. Do you have any clue how mean a middle-aged woman can be, especially if she's older than you, or happens to be your boss, or you are younger than her and you are her boss? Who knows what their dynamic was, if they had a dynamic at all beyond the screen? Like I said, Good Kid could be lying. Anyone can lie on the internet. But Good Kid was given a bit too much attention for them to be unimportant. Or maybe they were just a red herring. I wonder. Maybe Pat submitted a few of the more messed up stories to throw people off of the tamer, truer ones. Make some of those believable ones harder to believe. Blood and guts in a screensaver? You're crazy. A picture of a girl dressed as Amber? random screaming, terrified whispers, mutilated sprites. You're all so silly. It's like one of those bad creepypastas with the hyper-realistic eyes. It certainly would make a bunch of balls humming and twitching sound silly by comparison. Outlandish. Impossible. Stupid. After all, these stories are made up by children, and children should be seen, not heard. And what about all those Amber shitheads who do nothing but talk about the girl in pink? There are 5 other characters on the island. You guys are just obsessed. There's no big mystery. It's a silly screensaver. Stop making shit up. Why do people have to make everything ugly? Can't you just enjoy what we have without digging for something? There is nothing here but funny little characters on a funny little island. Why can't that be enough for you? But on the subject of sites that aren't the forum or the inside website, where does Grace fit in? I didn't forget about her either. Like I said, I think Grace is Joe and Rebecca's actual child who got pulled into this nightmare to try and placate Joe and Rebecca. You can't worry about where your child is if they're right next to you. Pat said she only had 2 daughters. Grace would, on a very technical level, be the stepchild, and let me tell you something as someone who was a stepchild, it doesn't mean your family. Grace hated the life on the island that she was forced into. She won't even look at the camera. But Rebecca looks straight at us. Rebecca plays along. What if Grace refused to play along and was punished the way that Amber was punished? What color was her ball? How many of her are at the bottom of the ocean? Apparently she learned when to stop fighting back. Now all she does is sit far away and stay away from everybody else. On the inside webpage is something called Grace's Guilt. It was just barely touched on, but it's there. What does Grace have to feel guilty for? Really reaching here, but what if Grace is the person behind the computer philosophy page that just seems to come out of nowhere? Blowing the whistle as best she can, confusing though it may be, to try and explain what has happened to her and everyone else on the island. Probably hard to make sense of anything when you don't have fingers or a face. We know there's at least 1 laptop on the island. What if Grace got a hold of it and managed to post one thing, trying to do so in a way that Pat might not be able to see? I'm trapped in here, and I may never return home. Maybe that's what Grace is supposed to feel guilty about. Grace's Guilt has a quote that contains the wording, "Now she lives her disgraceful retirement in the remote world of a cartoon, but reality will haunt her conscience forever." So what have we got? Amber is the scapegoat that is always being blamed, the lazy catch-all for everything that goes wrong, rolled up and thrown away over and over like a discarded tissue. Grace, the lost child, forgotten and ignored, neither good nor bad. Decoration. Just there to be seen, not heard, or cared about. Another piece of the puzzle to this messed up family that Pat is trying to sew together. Grace fell in line fast enough, but not so fast that she doesn't have a mention on the secrets page. And of course, little Holland. Holland, this clumsy and goofy child playing with a doll. The golden child. All of the projections of what should exist forced on this poor kid who looks so much like her mother. So much like Pat. Always so eager to run to Mommy and let her know the horrible thing that her sister Amber did. This little tattletale is so scrambled that even when the adults and Grace are talking about something, all Holland can do is roll around. Maybe Holland only tattles on Amber. Maybe that's why the adults are okay talking around her. Mommy praises her little golden girl as best as she can when she tells her all about those horrible things Amber was talking about. Amber doesn't look anything like Pat. That's one of the reasons that Pat is always putting the weight of everything falling down onto her. Maybe Amber looks like her ex-husband. Her ex-husband, who may very well be just another colorful ball rolling around at the bottom of the ocean, screaming for help that will not come. Pat will have her perfect life with Rebecca, still have 2 children. She'll look like the gracious woman that she is by allowing Rebecca's ex-husband and their shared daughter to come to the perfect paradise of the island. A wonderfully blended family, all thanks to Pat having such a good heart and being such a wonderful person. But Joe at one point was trying to commit suicide by sitting in a chair in the ocean and having Holland bring out a lamp. How does that quantify as a suicide attempt? Toaster in a bathtub. How about a lamp in the ocean? It doesn't have to make sense when you're desperate enough. But there's no real way off the island, is there? Whatever methods Pat used to bring people to the island, it wasn't done in a manner that was sustainable. Pat's 2 children, Amber and Holland, grew up and away, and likely put Pat either on a no-contact or low-contact information diet, meaning that she got the bare minimum of their lives, if anything. Maybe she lured them back with the promise of change. Maybe she told them that she got therapy. Doesn't really matter. She got them back either way. It makes sense that her children would be adults because P. Lawler mentioned that she had retired. Unless she had her children somewhere in her 40s, which can happen but isn't super common, or she retired really young, then her children likely were fully grown and got as far away from her as possible. I mean, we don't know what Pat's job was, but I wouldn't be surprised if she worked with computers. Pat, along with a few others, claims to have a few computers running in their home. Do you have any idea how expensive a computer was back in the 90s? Only 36.6% of households had an at-home PC in 1997. By the year 2000, that number had increased to 51%. But Pat claims to have a few of them in her home, just to watch the screensaver. You want to know what that would have cost back then? In 1997, when 3D Whisker was first introduced, a new computer could have cost over $2,000. To give an example of a popular computer at the time, a Dell Dimension XPS H266 cost $4,000 at that point in time. Adjusted for inflation, that's close to $7,000. And Pat says that she has multiple computers. These days, you can get a basic-ass laptop for $500. Either Pat was really raking in the big bucks, or she stole some shit. I wouldn't put it above her to utilize stolen technology to get her way. Possibly copied on floppy disks and carried home in her purse. Maybe she waited for old computers to be disposed of and grabbed them on her way to her car. Who knows? Who's to say she didn't instill the help of Singer way before the forum? And Singer helped her with some of the more difficult components of what she was trying to do, without fully revealing just what she was doing. And then when she had it perfect enough, she watched on multiple screens to make sure that things were running smoothly. And then, somehow, Pat gathered the people she wanted and transferred everyone, including herself, to the island. Maybe Pat looking at the laptop wasn't her looking at the forum, but it was her sending a command to other Pats across other screens to let them know that one of them had to take care of their Amber. The version of 3D Whisker that we are observing is the primary version. All the others are copies. How many balls are at the bottom of the ocean? Pat gets to relive life how she wanted. Rebecca, who had never been more than a friend on our side of the screen, now doesn't have anywhere to go but to Pat. Joe and Grace are there to keep Rebecca relatively sane and happy, but they're not immune to punishment. Amber, the lazy, good-for-nothing scapegoat, and Holland, the perfect little golden child, have been reborn. They can be Mommy's perfect little angels all over again, and this time they'll get it right because they don't have a choice now. They were adults outside of the machine, but inside the machine they are children again because that is what Pat wanted. Pat wanted a do-over. And she got her do-over. A narcissist loves getting what they want. And she wants her children to be seen and not heard. But Amber remembers just how awful it was. Amber remembers being an adult with a life away from her controlling, abusive mother. So she cries out for help. Somebody heard her. But Pat heard her, too. Oh well. Time to copy over what worked and throw away what didn't. If we lose a couple extra bits along the way, so what? Every copy leaves something behind, something you'll never get back, but it doesn't matter because Amber was never the favorite. If the next iteration doesn't work, there'll be a new one after it. And Pat will keep going until she gets a perfect Amber. So many red balls. So much lost. One more try. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing beyond the island. No one beyond the screen can help. What Pat wants, Pat gets. Behave or be broken. There is no third option. Just Pat and the island, your fellows, surrounded by a big blue trap called nothing. The tender flesh that enrobes this pixelated reality is breaking apart with every rewrite of every person that Pat has brought into her little circle. And Pat will recreate her toys over and over until she gets them right. But it's hard to get it right when some of your parts are missing. It's hard to get it right when you can't remember what you did wrong. You're gonna repeat the mistake if no one tells you what the mistake is, let alone if you forget what you did wrong in the first place. Over and over, split across countless screens, witnessed by many yet spoken of by few, fading away like the islands that shrink back like the deadly yet false cutilacune, until all that is left for us to see is a bright red punishment. Who's to say that the person in charge of a forum of a family vlogger channel isn't also the person holding the camera for that channel? It's easy to lie on the internet, and if you're careful about it or play into it right, who's going to fact-check you? Who's going to double-check what's going on in a tiny forum for a strange screensaver from the 90s? If P. Lawler has been staring at this for so long and hasn't seen any of the horrible things mentioned on the other website, obviously these horrible things are not happening. But... wait. Did you just see that? What are they doing? Oh well. It's just a screensaver. Nothing to worry about. It's not my business anyway. Okay, let's review. Surface level. Pat created a world to get attention from all sides and dragged people she wanted into it while simultaneously allowing people on the other side of the screen to see. These people can only observe, but they cannot interfere. Joe, and especially Rebecca, are enablers, with Rebecca being the main target of Pat's need for adult attention and validation. Amber is the scapegoat. Whatever she tried to do to get people's attention and get help has been squashed flat repeatedly. Holland is the golden child, Mommy's perfect little tattletale. Grace is the lost child, avoided and avoidant. She managed to get word out and was promptly othered, unable to face the camera. Pat also runs a forum about her cute little world so people can see just how wonderful her life is, and how happy everyone is with her, and how loved she is, and how great she is as a person and a mother. And if you don't agree, you get banned. If you blow the whistle, you get silenced. If you step out of line, you get punished. How many balls are at the bottom of the ocean? An entire separate website dedicated to talking about the strange and disturbing things that people have seen in this supposedly innocent screensaver. The more screens this screensaver comes across, the more downloads there are, the more people outside of the forum talk, the harder it's going to be for Pat to cover up what's really going on. Her perfect little world is going to crash down one day, and it looks like that day is coming soon. The cracks are showing, like the cracks in the flesh of some fictional person affected by a fictional skin disease talked about on a website for a tiny fictional island. The less control Pat has, the more balls at the bottom of the ocean. So, trying to gather this into something edible, I suppose. Looking further in, it's a story about narcissistic abuse and isolation. Looking wider, it's a possible allegory for those family vlogging channels and narcissistic abuse in general. It's also a jab at people who see something bad happening and look the other way because that person could never do horrible things to their children. Something cycle of abuse? Or maybe I'm the one projecting and I missed the point completely. At least, that's what I got out of it. There's probably a dozen other people out there who have reached a similar conclusion, but that doesn't mean that it's a bad conclusion to reach. It's probably just as many people who have completely different conclusions, and I can't wait to see those. I know there are other people out there who have covered this project, but I haven't clicked on any of their videos because I didn't want it to influence what I came up with. But that's the beauty of something that is so open but still has some structure. You can make connections and still have so much open space left over. Everyone comes up with their own spider web of what-ifs. I mean, yeah, I can connect A, B, and C, but another person can connect C, B, D, E, and F. Hell, somebody came through a minute ago with X, Y, Z, and that was a wild take, I'll tell you that. But whatever you get from this 90s throwback screensaver nightmare horror show thing, I hope you had as much fun with it as I did. I definitely had more fun with this than I did with Petscop. Okay. That face you just made tells me I need to explain myself. This is probably the most controversial thing you'll hear out of me. I didn't enjoy Petscop. And I know you have given me so much of your time already. But can you give me a little bit more so I can explain myself? Please? Thank you. Okay. First of all, it is not Petscop's fault that I couldn't enjoy it. It's really not. You see, Petscop initially was presented to me through what I had been watching through YouTube. It had been presented as an ARG, but it's not. Domenico has said that it is to be experienced, not solved, and I get that. There's nothing wrong with that at all when it comes to art. But I had been presented with Petscop as something I was supposed to pick apart and analyze and understand. Something I was supposed to derive answers from. But I can't do that. It's a mystery that isn't solvable. It's intentionally designed to be unsolvable. It's just something you experience. But I'm a robot. I'm curious. But alongside that curiosity is the horribly rigid thinking that comes with it. I like taking things apart and putting them back together, so I understand them more. Like taking apart the TV remote when you were a kid. That's what I like to do. But all I can do with the remote that is Petscop is hold it. All the screws on this remote are hidden under the plastic, and none of my screwdrivers work. All I can do is see a remote, but I want to know more about it. But that's not the point. And that can be difficult to grasp when all you know to do is take things apart and put them back together. What are you supposed to do with something you can't take apart? Actually, hang on. Let me reframe this. Okay. Imagine that the story you were trying to tell is a journey. With 3D Whisker, it felt like riding to the corner store on a bike that was too big for you to handle properly, so you keep almost tipping over and crashing into shit. You get the crap scared out of you a couple times, but hey, you make it to the corner store. Congrats! Next time you want to go to the corner store, or the next time you want to experience 3D Whisker, now it won't be so scary. And if it is, well, you've been scared before. You know what to do. Petscop, on the other hand, felt like being told by someone else that you're going to go somewhere. So get in the car. So you get in the car and you're like, okay, let's go. But instead, you end up sitting in an idling car for an hour and a half with the AM radio on, and then the car gets turned off and you go, that was a good trip, but I didn't go anywhere. I was told that we were going somewhere. Oh, I shouldn't have listened to that guy? I wish I knew that an hour and a half ago. That's the problem. I listened to what other people told me, and I went in with expectations that were in the wrong place. I was told that Petscop was an amazing puzzle, and that I had to see it to understand it, and it's the scariest thing this person in particular has ever seen. You like horror, right? Going to love this. You're gonna love Petscop, and I didn't. I was told it was one thing by people who didn't create it, and I ended up disappointed because I listened to people who weren't involved with the project. Or people who wanted it to be a certain thing. That's not the fault of Petscop or Tony Domenico. And don't think I missed the jab that Domenico took at the people who were making theories. That whole inside website might have had some truth to it in the sense of relating to the screensaver. Well, the people there were called Amber Shitheads for a reason. I don't blame Domenico for being sick and tired of people picking apart his work when that wasn't the point to begin with. If I was disappointed in not being able to crack open the remote that was Petscop, the clickbait theorizers that ruined the experience for me are the same people that saw the remote and took a hammer to it. You can't put it back together when you take a hammer to it. And I have sat through Petscop. I tried to understand. But with Petscop, there isn't enough there for me to do more than say, something really fucked up happened. But beyond possible child abuse, I can't explain it. And I'm unsettled and kinda disappointed. It's about the journey, not the destination, but I don't feel like I went anywhere. Maybe it has to do with me never growing up with video games. I have never owned any type of gaming system. I only played when I went over to friends' houses. But I could have a computer, and look where we are now. Maybe seeing so many people shouting from the rooftops about how Petscop was this, or how it was that, ruined it for me. The hype tainted my outlook. Maybe Petscop was just too big for me to handle, but I managed to grapple with the madness that was the monument mythos without exploding, and that had so much going on at once that when I got through, I got halfway through and had to stop and lay down. I had to lay down on the floor and stare at the ceiling for a bit because I was just overwhelmed, but I still went back to see more. Maybe Petscop was too confusing for me, but I liked Synecdoche, New York. That movie is confusing as shit, but I have fun watching it every time. Maybe I'm just not smart enough to understand Petscop. Maybe I just don't get it. Maybe I'm the problem, and I should stop talking. Yeah, right. 3D Whisker is different. There's a ton of ambiguity, and there aren't answers plopped right in front of you. Anything you come up with, you have to come up with through observation. But there's so much. I mean, I pieced out my own interpretation, as jumbled as it was, and it can stand on its own with the information presented. I can take in the information presented, put it together in my head, and then give it to you. But Petscop left me with so many unanswered questions and loose ends that I wasn't able to care about or connect to any of the characters given to me. I wasn't able to come to my own conclusions about much because there wasn't enough there for me to do that. And before you say anything, I did catch the link between Amber and Petscop and Amber in 3D Whisker. Petscop Amber is a round creature that likes being in her cage. 3D Whisker Amber is forced into a ball shape as punishment and cannot leave the island. I also caught the name Holland on a list of names of children who played Petscop, and the name of the golden child on the island. Whether it's a reference or connection, I can't say. I'm sure there are going to be people out there who have a different opinion of me because of how I feel about Petscop, and okay. You're entitled to that. My expectations were in the wrong place, and that led to me not getting enough out of it. But do you know how I found 3D Whisker in the first place? Nightmare Masterclass made a community post about it. He didn't even say anything, he just said, hey, this is over here. And considering he usually covers stuff that I enjoy anyway, I clicked on it. That's how you get me to look at something. Don't build it up, don't tell me how good or bad it is, just tell me it's there, and that it might be in my wheelhouse. If you give me no high expectations, you can't have me come crashing down when they're not met. The ambiguity within 3D Whisker helps here, the unknowables help here, the connections that I make going through 3D Whisker are ones I can actually make and give credence to. I like media I can interact with, even if my interaction is no more than me yelling about it to 100 or so people who will actually watch this video. By the way, I love you. Thank you for being here. Petscop had a lot of interesting concepts, and it is clear that it was made with great attention to detail. Horror doesn't need every single thing answered. But not enough in Petscop was answered for me. I'm sure if I had gone into Petscop without being flooded by blindingly bright thumbnails and people screaming about how amazing an ARG it was, when it clearly wasn't an ARG, I might have been able to enjoy it. And believe me, I've gone back more than once and it just doesn't do it for me. And that's okay. Not every work of art is going to touch every person. Not every complex and detailed mindfuck is going to drag you in and force you to look at it. There is a now-defunct art piece by Sun Yuan and Peng Yu of a robot that looks like it's squeegeeing up its own hydraulic fluid, titled Can't Help Myself. Some people look at that and see part of themselves in that machine, but there are just as many people who look at it and go, it's a piece of crap that's wasting space. When Felix Gonzalez Torres placed a mound of candy weighing roughly 175 pounds, the supposed weight of his lover known as Ross, into an art exhibit, people were confused. It's just a pile of candy. The idea of the pile of candy was for visitors to take one piece or more, and the pile would continue to shrink. It could be replenished, but that was not the point. Gonzalez Torres died due to AIDS-related complications, and his lover, Ross, also died due to AIDS-related complications. What is this pile of candy trying to say? It depends on what you get out of it, I guess. It could mean everything, or it could just be a pile of candy, and why would someone pay over $4 million to own it? I'm not being cute, somebody really did pay $4 million for it. And people will say that it's stupid, or that because they don't understand it, it is not art. You don't need to understand a work of art for it to be a work of art. Me not being able to understand and appreciate Petscop doesn't mean that it's not good. It just means that it wasn't for me. Me enjoying 3D Whisker doesn't mean that it was incredible, it just means that I got something out of it. Am I really making an honest point about what is hailed to be one of the scariest web series of all time and its much smaller and simpler predecessor? Or am I just running my mouth, hoping that nobody calls me a mean name down in the comments section? It doesn't matter which one, does it? I suppose, for the sake of argument, like everything to do with art, it's subjective. But I think I've talked enough for tonight. I mean it this time. Maybe I've talked enough for a lifetime. In fact, I've been going so long that I'm starting to see the sun come up through the trees. I'd love to go with you to make sure you're okay getting home, but I've got to keep the fire lit. Are you going to be able to make it back on your own? Good. Good. Thank you for coming out to the woods and listening to me chatter on about things. I missed you. I'll try to have something for you more often, but either way, thank you for coming. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. Until then, this is... gosh, what's my name again? Nah, it doesn't matter. This is me, signing off. I'll see you past sunset. Good night.